Hello, and welcome to Shusaku Review number 35. This is a game between Shusaku and Showa, and it's game number 33 in the book Invincible. In case anybody's curious why the review number does not match the game number, it's because the book has some games which it does not give an official number, and we still cover those on the channel. So that's why things are a little out of sync in terms of the numbering. Not too much in terms of the background of this game to talk about, other than that it happened just before the Castle Games in 1851. And the one kind of interesting thing about this game is that Shusaku has the white stones, and Showa decides to play Shusaku's opening against him. So we get some insight here in terms of how Shusaku decides to play against his own opening. And then there's not too much commentary for this game in terms of the book, so I might focus a little more on some basic or fundamental stuff, which might be helpful for some of the weaker players. Otherwise, this is going to be a much shorter review. And the commentary is by Kajiwara Takeo. Cool, so let's jump in. So to start off, Black plays Komoku in the bottom left corner. I'm not sure exactly what the deal with that was, but Shusaku plays kind of a normal move. These are basically the normal moves for Edo period games, except things are shifted around on the board a little bit. So as we know, during that time, white tended to approach rather than play the last corner, and black gets to play the last corner. So this is exactly the same as the previous game that we reviewed between Shusaku and Showa so far. And white approaches here, and black plays the Shusaku Kosumi. So this is still the exact same game, right? That we reviewed last time, except that the orientation is a little bit different. And here's where things change. So if you remember in the game where Shusaku was black and Showa was white, Showa played at A, basically trying to negate the nice pincer that black can get on the left side. And there's also a pressing move on the bottom, which we'll see, which kind of makes the extension on the left even larger. But Shusaku actually says, I'm fine just playing the open corner. This is really big. And the commentary here in the book was that nobody can really say which one is better. But Shusaku just approaches the corner. It's basically always going to be a big move, but this is where Showa played in the previous game, right? Which gave black a chance to actually black played here and then eventually approached this corner. This extension also would be possible, but the main ideas here is either it's extending on the left to kind of spoil black's plan, or just play the big opening move. And so Shusaku just plays the big opening move, which means that Showa gets to follow up on this side. And so during that time, the idea was, we can get this really big extension on the left-hand side we've raised up to the fourth line, so it makes this area kind of interesting, and it's going to put pressure on the C15 stone. Black actually makes the exchange first, and white answers. This pattern was played in the last game as well, right? So we kind of know this is a common pattern. And so basically, black is trying to get some height here, right? So he gets up to, what is this, like the sixth line? And then he plays the pincer. So, really interested in this area. One thing that the pro mentioned is that well, in the book it says nowadays, right? But you can't exactly take that for still being current, given that Go has changed quite a bit since the book was published. But the idea he mentioned is that Black could just play this first and then save. Like, there's multiple options on the bottom, right? And so his point was that Black would probably play this first, and then later Black can decide if he wants to press at C or if he actually just wants to attack the mark stone by playing something like A or B. But Showa plays the press first, and White jumps. We can maybe talk a little bit about what's going on here, right? It's like, why not this move? Which this move might be possible as well, but it's pushing from behind, right? So in general, anytime you can get out in front of your opponent's stones, then this is a much better feeling than pushing from behind. This is just kind of like a very basic idea or concept, right? And so how do we know that White can do this? And basically it comes down to, are we going to be okay if Black pushes and cuts? And we can look at both sides. So assuming Black cuts here, we're going to capture the cutting stone, right? That's kind of the rule in general when this happens. And now we get this, which is totally fine for White, right? Pretty good on the bottom. And Black still has this problem. And I think really the proper move here is probably something like this. So this is the strong, right? Well, let's just look at the different possibilities. So this is fine for White. White got a decent result, has Sente. Black's corner is not that big. We have moves like this later in endgame, which make A and B Miai, right? So if Black says, I'm not going to allow you to do that, this is pretty simple readout that White's just going to kill those two stones. And if Black connects, then we can do something like this. So the corner is not that big. And if Black does something different, like this, then these stones still have more of a liberty problem, right? Which means White can get something like this, and the bottom becomes even more interesting. So that's not really a problem for White. And if we look at the other side, again, we're going to capture the cutting stone, and we're going to capture, and now Black's got some problems in this shape because we've got a thin area here from the knight's move, but then we've also got the problem of the A stone. And so let's just say we capture this in a ladder. White can't go out, right? But the problem is we can't keep this a ladder and fix our shape, right? So if we capture, this is horrible, right? Broken shape, broken knight's move. So that basically like a game over almost type of situation. And if we play the move we want to play, then it's not a ladder anymore. So that's kind of like a little overview of why this jump works in this case. You can apply similar reasoning or logic in some different shapes. But so Black presses and then extends on the left. So in theory, this was kind of the threat of this Shusaku's opening, right? Except it's being played against him now. And we get to see how he's going to handle this. And so this 3-space low pincer does put some pressure on White, right? There's no longer space to make a 2-space extension, and obviously White's not going to play something like A because it's just really kind of constrained, especially for so early in the opening. And so what White does, he kind of uses a different idea, right? He says, I'm going to play from the other side and kind of allow you to put more pressure on A, maybe willing to give up the A stone, and I'm just going to focus more on the top. One thing worth noting, I mentioned I'm not going to focus too much on AI stuff in these reviews, but in cases where I actually know something to a reasonable degree of certainty, I will mention it. In general, this pressing move, AI considers it to pretty much like always be good for white. So AI is probably going to want to do something like this, which is actually the reason why if you look at pro games now, you will very rarely see pincers at all in kind of like normal board positions. If there's something really on the board screaming like, hey, we need to pincer to like make use of a huge thickness or something, then there's still going to be cases where it makes sense, right? But in the early opening, in general, that's why now we see more of like we answer with like Kosumi or a knight's move and not so much pincers. It's because as soon as white gets this, it's pretty much like good result for white. So this I'm like 95% sure that this would be possible as well. But in any case, Shusaku plays kind of the other idea of like, sure, take away, or you can attack the A stone. I'm going to focus on the top. And so black has this inside stone, right? And it needs to come out. And so he's going to come out with the Kosumi. He doesn't want to touch the A stone, right? Because the A stone is kind of like the weak stone that he's targeting. And in general, we don't want to touch weak stones, right? Because that's going to help them become stronger. So black just comes out, white answers, and black extends. You can see that this is kind of good for the top for white, but it is hurting the C15 stone. And then white plays the knight's move, and black finishes up here. And this is really subtle, but interesting. The pro pointed out that this seems just a little bit good for white. And the reason for that is that this A move is there's something that it's like it's really hard to put your finger on this exactly, but it just feels a little bit slack, like not like 100% value, maybe like 90-95% or something like that. Because if you notice, the B stone still actually has quite a lot of room. Like it's not going to live like directly probably, but there's like an attachment, there's a slide. The A move didn't like directly put too much pressure on B, but it is kind of this nice shape here at least. And so what the commentary was that black should probably jump here instead, and that would be better because now naturally white's going to want to play something like this to not give the tiger's mouth, and then black can play here, and this is nice and strong, and black doesn't necessarily need a follow-up move. He's going to have to worry about something here, right? But the pro's feeling was that this would be a better result. So instead, it's like this. And note that the B stone, we're not going to do something with that directly, but it does still have Aji, and you might be surprised to see how much value Shusaku gets out of that later in the game. But for now, we do that, and then white approaches here, right? So we've given something up on the left side, but you can see white kind of does have reasonable prospects on the right and on the top. And so again, black has this inside weaker stone, so it needs to come out in some way. He chooses to attach on the top of this stone. My guess is he doesn't want to help white build the top too much, which is why he doesn't attach to this stone. This is like my ideas, though. There's no commentary on this joseki here in the book, at least not for this initial choice. But white did, again, he came up to like, what is that? It's the 6th line again, right? So it's going to be important whether or not this ends up being a valuable move, right? Because it's kind of floating in the air. And so black is trying to avoid that becoming a good move. So he attaches here. White answers with, kind of standard Hane. And then black plays here. Just as this is kind of an interesting Joseki. Shape is a little interesting. I've seen this a couple of times. None of which have been recently. So I doubt this is probably still a Joseki, but this was at the time. And at this point, it seems like the tiger's mouth next is going to be kind of like a vital point for black to shut the corner. So white comes in, and then black plays a shape point here, and white says, "Oh, I'm gonna cut you." Black says, "Well, this is Sente to capture 1 stone, right?" So white has to connect. Black has to connect. Normally, we don't try and push through when we can't, right? But if you look in this case, the shape for black is kind of ugly, so that's why I'm guessing that that's why it's reasonable to do that in this Joseki shape, is just because black ends up with a pretty ugly shape. And now the question is kind of like, Sansan is always really big in this sort of shape. Like whoever gets Sansan, it's a big deal, right, for points and also for security of the group. So that could be possible. But there's also this obvious point here at B, right? And again, going back to this G14 stone, we kind of want to make that valuable. So Shusaku chooses B in this case, which means that black gets to get A, which is going to basically secure his group for now. And now white needs to play a follow-up move on top. But if you look, this turning move at A is going to be rather powerful. Or you could think, maybe like some sort of pincer on the side over here could potentially threaten these. So white basically pushes once first, saying, okay, I'm going to surround you somehow. And black comes out. And now this is like perfect, right? This is better than if we just play here directly. That's sort of something to get a feeling for, right? So this is kind of like a good exchange at the right timing. And then white plays on top. And now this group is okay for now. And so the last, large area on the board is kind of the right side. And the question is, how are we going to enter the right side? Most likely we're going to approach the corner, right? And Showa decides to approach here. And the pro didn't really like this. He felt like white is pretty strong on the right-hand side. And therefore, black should play the more kind of like easygoing 2-space approach move. And I actually just realized that I skipped some stuff in this top right corner. So let's take a look. There were some other possibilities for black here that were shown. One would, instead of attach, just Kosumi, and then jump. This is actually similar to what we saw in a variation on the top left, right? Now there's kind of this tiger's mouth, so white's going to play there. Black needs to connect. White extends. And so this is another possibility. Pro felt like this is still pretty okay for white. This does end up being a bit lower, so maybe is somewhat decent for black as well. And then he pointed out that there's a more modern Joseki. Again, I doubt that this is something you would see in like an actual game today, but there is this move that was played at some point in time. And so white can push twice and play this interesting shape move, right? This looks a little bit weird to only come this far, but obviously we're threatening to push and cut, which would be, Atari, so cut and sente. So black connects, and then white plays here, threatening to connect under, which would basically make all the stones safe and would be big for points, right? So black has to come down and separate. A becomes like a key point. White can play that. And then there's kind of like a miai here. Like the corner's open, but white can also go to the side. But from black's perspective, right, we're starting to get surrounded here. And if we go into the corner, we're not going to get two eyes. So black would just force from this side and extend here. And this one, I think it looks pretty decent for black in terms of breaking the top, right? And making this stone probably not so useful. And actually this entire group now is more of a liability than anything at this point. So this could have been a pretty good option for black. Sorry for doing things a little bit out of order there, but this is what was played in the game. And now we get to here where black approaches high. If we evaluate, do we want to pincer or do we want to answer? Kind of the traditional thinking is, like these stones are all low, which means that the bottom is not that interesting, right? But the right side is kind of interesting because we have something here that we can build with, right? And so Shusaku answers here to try and build something up. But again, the pro felt like because white is strong on the right hand side, black could have played the more kind of relaxed move here. And the idea, for those of you that haven't seen this move before, the idea is when the right side is important, you can play this move, and if white protects the corner, now you can extend, get your two space extension, and you've effectively nullified the right hand side, right? And even white's going to have to worry about these stones. So if you play this move because the right hand side is important, it means that it's very likely that white will pincer anyway. So he might play here, perhaps here. And when we do this pincer, basically we get a better result in the corner. So that's kind of like the logic behind this move. It's like, are you going to let me break the right hand side, which is important? If so, I will. And if you're not going to allow me to, then I'm going to get like a better than normal result in the corner. And so what will typically happen here, and this is just kind of like a standard sequence, white hanes, black cuts. Cross cut can be complicated, right? But there's basically one main variation here, which is we Atari in the corner first. I'll try to explain why in a second. And then we Atari from above, and then we connect. So we're focusing on the right hand side, right? And now A has become a key move, right? Because there's this stone here. So black's going to play A, and white's going to defend because there's still Aji in this black stone here. And then black's going to defend in some way. On this board, probably here. Because otherwise there's Aji with this stone. So this is kind of what could be expected in that case. And the reason we Atari the corner first is we don't want to give black a chance to kind of like, we don't want to give him a choice basically. So if we do the same move but in a different order, if we Atari here and then here, now black has a choice of doing this and taking the outside. And even if it's not necessarily good on the board, there might not be a reason to give a choice for no reason. So like when we Atari this way and then this way, black doesn't really have a choice, right? He has to answer. If we play here, we capture, and now black can either come out here, in which case we're just going to capture these two stones. This looks really bad for black. So black's going to have to capture this stone, but this is a small life in the corner, and now the right hand side is like really strong, right? So that's kind of like the details of the order there. But black did not play there. He played here. And so the pro felt this was not the greatest, basically. Black plays out towards the center, and white extends on the bottom, and very kind of low on the bottom, right? Not a whole lot of territory being made there. And then black starts to push or press from the top. The other main choice here, which is no longer really a joseki, but we'll look at it anyways. But since AI, nobody plays this anymore. White hanes, black answers, white goes to connect, black wedges in, and there's different variations here, but let's just look at the main one. White plays Atari, black goes down. Now we kind of have to worry about these stones as white, right? So we Atari to get a little more space here, and then we play here, and so these stones are starting to get in trouble. Black captures, white captures, black gets the Atari, and that's like the end of the joseki. And so black has sente. The reason this is not a joseki anymore is that AI basically says it's good for black. Like on most board positions, if you play this out, you're going to see a pretty big reduction in win percentage for white. I think a big reason for that is that AI really values sente and josekis that end with sente. But yeah, maybe that's helpful. If you're still playing this one as white, you could, depending on the board position, you might want to think about not playing that anymore. And then if you're black, you can be happy whenever this happens. The pro said that this would be too good for white, and my guess is that if you put this in the AI, that actually wouldn't be the case now. He felt like this, he even called this a moyo, which was kind of weird to me. This just seems like a decent area, but it's not clear to me that there's anything super special here. But that was kind of the reasoning for why, like, we'll come out rather than do that if we think that this is good for white, right? Which I'm skeptical of. So the game goes like this, and black presses, and then interestingly here, black jumps, and the explanation that was given, they said this is the correct shape in this case, because if black just walks ahead and just follows, then this weird looking move, which connects the stones, also has an effect on the eye space in the corner. And so it's hard to know if that's actually what Ito Showa was thinking about, but this move does definitely have an effect on the ice base in the corner. The only thing is, it's not clear to me that like at least today that Black would actually answer this, right? It is the shape move, but it also feels, I'm skeptical again that this is where Black would play. But in any case, they said this was the correct shape in this case. And obviously, it's thin though, right? So White pushes, Ataris. We have to block, right? We definitely can't do this. This is just a Broken Knight's move, so we can't do that. We have to block. White captures. We block. So at least we're trying to keep everything inside here, right? White cuts. Black captures. White answers. And now kind of the trick here for Black is this move. He's going to try and come out. And he comes out one more. Let's just kind of follow this to the end, and then we can look at it a little bit more. White captures the one stone. Black plays Atari. White captures. So in the end, Black got like some reasonable stones in the center that maybe he can use to do something, and we'll see that later. At this point, like White has a choice, right? Because and cutting, which Shusaku did in the game, that's kind of like the safe move. If we come out, now Black can connect, right? And we got to figure out what's going to happen here. This looks complicated. And so, yeah, I guess what I'm getting at here is that Black kind of had this interesting sequence in mind where he, although it looks like he's trying to come out here, his real goal actually is to just get something in the center. And so he allows that to happen. White settles on the right-hand side. And now, this is good enough. We don't need to play another move. I think, given that there's like odd G around A and B, and there's a cut at C, a lot of us would probably just instinctually play the next move. But White's group is like totally alive, right? And Black doesn't have any like serious weakness to like the group as a whole. And so it's time to do something more important than that. And given that we got these stones in the center, we can start looking to try and take more of the center. And so this was like a common, basically like an after Joseki or like a middle game Joseki sort of move, you could think of it as. This move is putting pressure on White's group and basically just looking to get more in the center, right? And so, yeah, let's actually watch how this plays out. So it's interesting, right? Because it can be easy to get confused in this sort of shape. I know I certainly do, because there's like from both sides. There's like a push here for White, which means there's like two cuts here. And the same for Black, right? There's like a push, which means there's two cuts. So there's quite a lot of possibilities. But so how do we know what to do with this White group? The group needs help, and the corner is a reasonable option in this case. So we'll go corner first, attach to a strong stone. Black's going to block that, right? Because otherwise we can just live easily. And now there's a key move here, which is right here. And the reason it's a key move is it protects some of like the cut, right? So if Black pushes, now we block at B. There's only one cut, which basically means there's no weakness because we can just kill the cutting stone. But then the other thing is we're threatening to play C next, which would be instantly alive, essentially, right? So black Ataris connects, and you can see there's no cut now, which means black's weaknesses are more serious. So black connects, and then white captures one stone. And so this is a sort of Joseki. Another interesting detail, this Atari is important. There's a couple shapes that have this sort of concept, but even though black already knew he was going to give that stone up, it's important to make that exchange. And the reason is that now black can play here and white has to answer. Whereas if we go back, like if we just play the main move, this was the main move, right? But we made the exchange first. Now when white plays here, you can't do this, right? That's not going to work. So that's this sort of second line Atari. There's some shapes where you put the exchange in because it gives you the forcing move later. So in the game, it went like this. And now this is another lesson in Tanuki. There's a cut here, but it's points, right? It doesn't concern the health of the group, and it doesn't, even like if we just give it away, we can still build something on the left. So we need to do something bigger, and black invades on the top, right? This is a big area, and this is a little scary, right? Because it's not exactly clear how we're going to be able to bridge from this stone to this stone. There's some thinness around the A area. There's a lot of black stones in the center. So this is a nice invasion. Just on the surface of it, it looks like a nice invasion for black. And white plays from this group, which is about to get surrounded in one move. So it makes sense that he plays from this side. Black extends here. This is a very good feeling move for black. There's this dog's face shape. This is a good shape when you have these three stones. And so one of my teachers, Insung, from the Youngusan Dojang, which you can check out on KGS, he calls this breaking the dog's face. So when you play on that spot so that your opponent can't make the dog's face shape, this is like a common attacking move, right? Because now you're threatening to cut through. And we're also getting a nice little one space extension here, which is going to help us move out towards the center. So this is just in general a nice shape. White needs to answer, which puts some more pressure over here, right? So this stone that we sort of gave up a long time ago is maybe going to come into play now. This isn't an immediate issue for black though, so he's going to come out, and notice the dog's face shape again here. So this is actually kind of a cool example. We got to see breaking the dog's face and then making the dog's face. White plays here, which the pro said it's an interesting probe, basically. The question is, are you going to answer on this side, or are you going to answer on this side? And Showa says, I'm going to answer on this side. And the commentary was that if I kind of learned a shape thing here, if black plays here, now what's going to happen is black can be sealed in completely. And from the other side, that actually can't happen. And I had to look at it a little bit, and it's because the triangle stone is the high stone, if that makes sense, and the square one is the lower stone. So when we come through like this, we actually end up connecting back up to this higher stone. If we play, I'm not going to play that and break the tree, but if we did Actually, we'll see it in another variation. If we did the same thing, same sort of shape, black's actually going to come out, right? Because the stone is lower and it's not going to be in the way. So Showa answers there. And now it's time for white to make use of this A stone. And he decides that playing the Hane and then cutting through, that's not going to work directly, right? Because black's going to get the first move in the corner. We're not really going to be able to fight with that. So where is the vital point for making use of this stone? Maybe think about that before I show the move. And basically the probe is here. And you can see there's an AB Mii asking like, oh, are you gonna protect your corner and let me connect back to A, which is gonna help my group and also scoop some points out? Or are you gonna play A, in which case I can actually play B in the corner? And black says, yeah, I don't think I want to give the whole corner up, so I'm gonna compromise. And now white makes an exchange here. Like, he's planning to come back here, but he wants to try and make a path to connecting on the top. So he plays here. Black captures the stone this way, which gives like follow-up moves to come out, right? So this is pretty good move in terms of shape. And now white comes back. Black has to block the corner because it's big for points and for life, right? White fixes the shape. Black fixes the shape. And now we're going to start coming through here. And black isn't interested in separating here, although I think it would be valid. But what black decides is I'm going to come out and basically let you connect. White makes kind of one exchange, sort of little knight's move here, which is interesting. He's not actually planning on this working for now, but he puts this exchange in. And black pushes, and now white says, okay, yeah, now I need to connect. So the question is, how do we connect from A to B? And it's the light move that we need to play, right? And the reason is because we have weaknesses around. So like this isn't going to be great, right? Because there's this Atari. So we're going to be giving up more later. Actually, even something with the Hane looks like it could be a little annoying or have some Aji. And if we play like this, there's also going to be some problems, right? Like with a push and an Atari. And now there's all these cuts. So sometimes you have to just know when to back off with the shape. And yeah, let me play black's next move. He's really focusing on the center now. But just as one final note, one way you can think about this is you can pretend like black has this exchange in already. And then you say, where do I need to put the white stone? And in this shape, we need to play light. Okay, so I guess it's worth noting that the verdict on the invasion was that white handled it just fine. He got to connect up. There's still some points here. Black did get some more stones towards the center, and the left side looks really interesting. But the pro felt like it went fine for white. He got to make good use of the A stone, reduce the corner, and kind of parried the attack just fine. This still looks pretty scary though, right? Like, all these stones towards the center. And so I was actually pretty excited to see like how is Shusaku going to deal with this, because I know I can get pretty concerned in situations like this personally. And he comes in, so he plays here. It's an interesting move. It's like a standard sort of move, right? A lot of times you could see like a shoulder hit. Perhaps he felt this was too deep. But this move prepares the shoulder hit next, and it has a better relationship with this stone, right? Which is like one of the only sort of helping like stones or like exit options that he has, right? So you can see how by playing here, the triangle stone is likely going to be useful, whereas if we come in this deep, there's not really a relationship between these two stones. So he comes in, and Showa plays the most calm move. He just says, okay, well, I'm going to take away this direction, right? You're not going to be pressing me down and getting like free shape from that. And I'm getting the points from this. And you're still surrounded. Like you can't connect by playing this directly. And then so Shusaku says, okay, I'm just going to continue here. I'm reducing, starting to try and make some shape. And now is when black commences the attack kind of in earnest. Okay, we're attacking here. So we need to help these two stones. So let's attach to a strong stone, right? We're in black's area, and white is weak, so every stone is a strong stone, really. But we're going to attach to this one to try and get some shape. Black Hanes. Now we're getting some shape. There's a vital point here, so black plays the vital point to try and deny us some shape. And then white wants to connect at A, but the feeling is that just doing that directly is a bit heavy. And this is another one of those things that's hard to get a feel for. But white plays this kind of like a Tsuji here. And this is what's sometimes called an inducing move. And the idea is that we're trying to get black to help us to play the move we wanted to play in the first place, but in a more natural way. And this is a really great example of it. So by playing here, black wants to come into the vital point, and then now we get to play the move we wanted to play, but it's with a much better feeling, because now like these two stones could potentially become heavy later. Again, this is a very subtle thing, but yeah, so this was an interesting inducing move there. And now notice the other aim of attaching to this stone was once we get more, we're starting to get more of like a three-dimensional shape in this area. Now connecting with A is becoming much of a more real threat. And so black says, okay, yeah, I gotta keep you separated. White puts in the cut to make an exchange. Black helps his stone. Just extend. We don't want to give a lot of forcing moves to white. And then white plays this Hane, which is a really interesting move. This is the one area where there was quite a bit of reading involved, and there were some interesting diagrams that he showed. Let's take a look at what happened first, and then we'll go back and see why black doesn't cut. But black plays the fighting shape, right? We saw this in the last game, actually, where Shusaku played the empty triangle in a fight because there was like a liberty concern. So sometimes this is the move, and this is one of those cases. White connects, and now black is going to push through. Answering at A would just be like overplay, right? That's like the normal shape move, but black's just going to cut, and white doesn't really have any recourse. So we can't be too greedy and try to get everything here. So we're just going to focus more on this group on the side, which is going to be easier to live anyways, right? And black's going to keep it separated, so you can see these are starting to look like a sacrifice, which that's fine. Shusaku makes one more exchange. Black keeps the shape solid and keeps the two sides separated. And now white plays this really nice shape here, which kind of, voila, we've used this A stone in the end after all, right? Coming back all the way to here. It's amazing how these strong players always seem to get value out of the stones later on, like no matter what happens. So white plays there, and black puts this exchange in. And so now we can see what's happened here is that white has just like completely lived on the left-hand side, which, yeah, black's center still looks scary, but white is basically winning now, right? If we look at the board without actually counting, we can see the majority of the side territory. Like we've got white here, 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 a little bit here. Like where's black's side territory? We've got some in the corner. Basically nothing here. There's even still a cut here. And so we just have this center. And this isn't like it's big, right? But it's not big. It's not the sort of center that's big enough to make up for the rest of the board. So black is basically behind now at this point, I would say. But he's going to try and make the center bigger. It's really the only thing he can do, right? So let's shoulder hit to try and make this bigger. We're just going to swallow these stones here in the center naturally. So shoulder hit, we're going to respond. Push one more time, black Hanes, and then we come back and play kind of the shape point here. This is also the stone that's going to give us another option into the middle, right? So this is important. And black makes exchange here to limit the corner. And now he's going to come back and fix this, because that's getting big. White says, okay, I'm going to make my exchange here as well, threatening to cut. So this is another, this one's kind of obvious, but good, instructive in terms of timing, right? Okay, you're going to cut me. Now's the perfect time to just threaten to take your two stones, right? Because you need to answer, and then I'll respond. And now white is just going to slowly encroach into the center here, little by little. And also notice that this group is we're starting to see like this could be a problem, right? So black answers, which looks pretty necessary. White comes further in. And now we're looking to connect to this stone, right? So black's got to do something about that. And now that we have a helping stone here, white's like, hey, I can do something on the bottom, right? Like connecting below is really good, or really big for points. And there's also some weird shape here. Maybe I can cut you, or P can come through. And so black connects. And now white pushes up, putting more pressure, or like more of a threat to do something with this stone again. Black says, that's cool, but this is Sente. So white answers. And then black comes back and answers. And just looking at this real quick, just very basically, or actually, let me pass for white. There's this placement, and now how do we connect this stone back? It's with the monkey jump, right? And in general, you play from the side you're escaping to. So here, rather than G1. There is some reading you can do here in terms of stuff that white can try, but basically this group is going to die. So that's why white answers, then black comes back. White forces, then connects, threatening to come further into the center by capturing 2 stones here. So black answers, white threatens again. You can see this is becoming very painful for black at this point. This is not what you want to see happening to your one territory that you have. And then white pushes in even more. Black hanes. And now white not extends, but kind of closes up the side here. It's a big move. And black plays this very big move. White plays here, threatening the shape, and black cuts, which locally this move makes sense, right? White's got some shape problems here. But black cannot do this because there's too much of a threat on this side. White pushes, cuts. We're about to capture this group, right? So obviously black has to respond. White cuts, and black resigns here. This is actually a cool reading problem. I'm going to show what can happen here in a second. But I think this, yeah, I try reading this out on your own if you're like a low Q or a low down player. I thought it was pretty interesting. But basically, black knows at this point something's going to die. And in fact, the commentary was that black was probably just setting the stage for resignation at this point. Like, it's not that he didn't know this was gonna, he was gonna lose something by not answering here. He's basically just looking for a place to resign because he's too far behind on points. And okay, so what's gonna happen here? Basically, so how would we read this? We see that there's like a forcing move at A. So we can imagine that white can get a stone at A, which means the triangle stones are a concern, right? And then we also see there's weakness around here. So that's basically, and then I guess the other thing, I'm going to use the circles. I don't usually use the circles. There's this interesting shape here, kind of like this, sometimes called like a giraffe's face, maybe. There's the dog's face, which is one we looked at, and then there's like the horse's face, which is a little bigger, and the giraffe is the really big one. But let's take a look at the shape. So if we let's just try to kill this. Basically, what I'm getting at, there's like 2 options here, B and C. So let's try and capture the stone this way. White can Atari. And then because of this shape, basically white's going to connect one way or the other. So we try to help our stones, but again, white's going to connect one way or the other. So this way, it's very obvious that these ones are just going to die like immediately, basically. And if we go the other way, now this group up here, which is even bigger, is going to die, and also there's still a cut here. So that's not going to work. So we can rule out C. So if we play B, now the shape problem here becomes the issue, because there's an Atari, right? So free Atari, capture, and now we come through and we kill these stones. and there's no other like fancy stuff you can do, right? Like even if you try to give 2 stones up, which in some cases would be a good way to handle this, it doesn't matter because there's still a miai of cuts here. So white's going to get something. That is why black resigns there. So that's the game. Let me scan through here real quick. I want to make sure I didn't miss any sequences or diagrams that were worth showing. Oh, I did. I missed one. Okay, so let's go back and look at this more closely. If black does this one, as I kind of alluded to it earlier, white's just going to answer here and live in the corner. And now we have a very clear threat. So black's going to need to connect. And now we can see the other shape I mentioned. So white can cut. And although it doesn't actually close black in, notice the difference here now. Because the stone is lower, we can't actually close black in. But white can just play here. And the top was broken, but white's totally fine. Like the corner changed colors, right? So we can give something up on the top. Black lost, these points, and now we have those points, so that's like double value. And these stones aren't really doing much anymore. And we're also coming into the center, which has value in itself anyways, right? I mean, we do have to worry about this group, but he's not going to die here, right? So there's that. I think that was probably... Oh no, I lied. Sorry guys, I dropped the ball on this one. Let's go ahead and look at the cut here. So if black cuts, basically what white is gonna do here is try and set up like a squeeze shape. So we'll extend. We can't capture these 2 stones, but we don't need to. We just set up the squeeze. And so basically what white wants to do here is there's thinness over here. So we want to aim at that, and we basically want to make sure that these 2 black stones can't come out in this direction. And we can do that by constraining the liberties, right? So when black comes out, we play this squeeze shape. Black needs to capture. And now there's a liberty shortage, which basically means it's very hard for black to come out here. And then black can jump. Yes, jump. And threaten this cut. Oh, this is actually, yeah, this is nice. This is another breaking the dog's face shape. So this game is quite a good example for this technique. So black needs to connect. And now we do kind of a similar thing here. We'll extend. And it looks like we can't capture these 2 stones in a clean way. But what can we do? We can wedge, cut, and play here. And it's a ko. So we can't connect, right? So this is going to be a ko, which to have a ko for the entire game in your moyo, this is actually a really bad situation for black. This would be a pretty bad result because there's so many different threats, right? To do stuff, to like either live or threaten some part of black's big area to come in. So this isn't going to work. And so that's why black plays strong here instead, which is the correct move. Yeah, my bad on not showing those at the appropriate time during the review. Yeah, so that's it. And so the next game, we're going to be getting into a sequence of castle games coming up, which that should be really interesting, right? The castle games were kind of the really important games played in front of the emperor, basically. Um, and so we can expect, you know, some really high quality games, maybe even higher quality than usual for that period. Um, so that'll be the next game. It is actually castle game number 5 against Hayashi Hakue Monyu. So that'll be the next review. I put out some polls. I'm interested in what rank people that are watching are, just because that'll give me an idea of like how much I should focus on like more advanced, complicated variations, how much it's worth just talking about basic shapes and stuff like that. I'm really interested in what's going to be most helpful. Hopefully it's a reasonable balance now. I feel like anybody could get something out of these reviews as they are now. But go ahead and respond to that if you get a chance. And then the other thing I'm interested in is getting like a little community going again, like we had before, like 9 or 10 years ago. It seems to me that like all the club rooms and stuff are just dead on KGS now, which is kind of sad. I don't know if that's just a function of time or a function of AI, but if people are interested, I would. It would be cool to try more of like the live interactive format. I went back and watched a couple of those again over the last few days, and it does seem to me that they had a really nice flow because we just naturally got questions from viewers and then could answer those rather than like guessing what people's questions would be. Yeah, so let me know if you're interested in that, and if there's enough people, we can create a channel or use the old channel and start scheduling some of these. And if we get enough people over time, another thing that I think would be really interesting to do would just like have a pool for a fund where we can get some lectures from some pros or stronger players. We did some of that in the past, and that was really cool. And I think it'd be cool to do again. So yeah, so there's a poll for that as well. That's why I'm mentioning that. So go ahead and answer that if you have a chance. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.